Dear students, I'm here with your next story, The Footprints Without Feet. This story is written by well-known versatile writer H.G. Wells. His stories and novels are very famous. You remember? Invisible Man, Time Machine, and The Man on the Moon. They are very, very famous books. Now he raises and focuses on one more question in the story is that scientific endeavors or discoveries or inventions can be also disastrous or fatal to the mankind. And this story is about 4-5 characters. I'll tell you basically the protagonist of the story is Griffin, the scientist. Then the two boys who first encountered the adventure of Footprints Without Feet. Then there is a store assistant, a storekeeper, and then there are clergymen or what we call them, minister in the church or a priest. Or there are a couple, Mrs. Hall and Mr. Hall. They are owner of a inn or a hotel or in the small village Iping. I'm going to read out the story for all of you. The story raises, can a man become invisible? This is the story of a scientist who discovered how to make himself invisible. Does he use or misuse his discovery? The two boys started in surprise at the fresh muddy foot imprints. What are they? Imprints of a pair of bare feet. What was barefooted man doing on the steps of a house in the middle of London? And where was the man? As they gazed, a remarkable sight met their eyes. A fresh footmark appeared from nowhere. Further footprints followed, and one after another, descending steps and progressing down the street. The boys followed the fascinated and until the muddy impression became fainter and fainter and at last disappeared altogether. The explanation of the mystery was really simple enough. The bewildered, surprised, confused boys had been following the scientist who had just discovered how to make the human body transparent, not invisible. Griffin, who is a scientist? Griffin. The scientist had carried out experiment after experiment to prove that the human body could become invisible. Finally, he swallowed certain rare drugs and his body became as transparent as a sheet of glass, though it also remained as solid as a glass. Brilliant scientist though he was, Griffin was rather a lawless person. He was having criminal bent of mind or cruelty in his action. So the word is used in the story, lawless person. He never abided by the law. His landlord disliked him and tried to eject him, send him out of the house. In revenge, Griffin set fire to the house and get away without being seen. He had to remove his clothes. Thus it was that he became a homeless wanderer. Somebody who is roaming around, wandering around, without clothes, without money, quite invisible, until he happened to step in some mud and left footprints as he walked. He escaped easily enough from the boys who followed his footprints in London, but his adventures were by no means over. He had chosen bad time of the year to roam around about the London without clothes. It was midwinter because it was severe chilled cold in London. The air was bitterly cold and he could not do without clothes. Instead of walking about the streets, he decided to slip into big London store for warmth. So he was no. He thought of breaking into means he thought of going inside a house, inside a store where he can steal some of those woolen clothes. Closing time arrived. As soon as the doors were shut, Griffin was able to give himself the pleasure of clothing and feeding himself without regard to expense. He broke open boxes and wrappers and fitted himself out with the warm clothes. Soon, with shoes as an overcoat and wide-brimmed hat, he became a fully dressed, visible person. And that was again a problem because when he used to wear the clothes, he used to become a visible person. When he is not wearing any clothes, he is an invisible man. But once he wore those overcoat, hat, shoes, and other things, he became a visible man. In the kitchen of a restaurant, he found cold meat, coffee, and followed up the meal with sweets, wine, and then from the grocery store, finally he settled down to sleep on a pile of quilts. So there were quilts, quilt, the warm covering, stuffed with those cotton. It's called quilt, and he found a cozy place for himself to sleep and settle down. If only Griffin had managed to wake up in the good time, all might have been well. As it was, he did not wake up until the assistants were already arriving next morning. When he saw a couple of them, he saw them in the store approaching, he panicked. Now, see the spelling of panic. Panic is panic, but when you put it in the past tense, panicked, extra K is added there. Panicked. And he began to run. They naturally gave chase. In the end, he was able to escape only by quickly taking off his newly found clothes. Immediately he got them from the store, but it was impossible for him to live in those clothes, and he had to take them out one after another. So once more he found himself invisible but naked in the chill January air. This time he decided to try the stock of the theatrical company. Now he wanted to go to theater company where he can disguise himself in a different appearance and hope to find not only the clothes but also something that would hide the empty space above his shoulders. Shivering with cold, he hurried to Drury, Drury, Drury Rail, the center of the theater world. He soon found a suitable shop. He made his way invisible upstairs and came out a little later wearing bandages around his forehead, dark glasses, false nose, big bushy white whiskers, mustaches, beards, as a large hat to escape without being seen. He callously, cruelly attacked the shopkeeper from behind, and after which he robbed him of all the money he could find. He not only attacked him, took away his clothes, but also robbed his money. Eager to get away from crowded London, he took a train to village Iping, where he booked 2 rooms at the local inn. Inn is a place, it's a kind of hotel. And the arrival of the stranger at an inn in the winter was an unusual event, because it was winter. Nobody used to go there, so it was unusual for a person to arrive at that period of time. A stranger of such uncommon appearance set all the tongues wagging. Thus, everybody started talking. Not did he became a talk of the town or village. So everybody started talking about who is he, why he has come. So again, he has invited many problems. Mrs. Hall is a owner, a landlord's wife, made very every efforts to be friendly, but Griffin had no desire to talk and told her my reason for coming to Iping is to a desire for solitude, and he gave an excuse or what reason why he has come to this place. He desires solitude. He desire loneliness. He wants to be alone in that countryside. I did not wish to be disturbed by my work. Beside, an accident had affected my face, and because he was, he put bandage on his face, so he said an accident had affected my face. Satisfied that her guest was an eccentric is the person who is unconventional and strange scientist, in a view of the fact that he had paid her in advance. Mrs. Hall was prepared to excuse his strange habits and irritable temper. But the stolen money did not last long. You cannot survive on the stolen money. And it was over, it ran out. Presently, Griffin had to admit that he had no more ready cash, no more hard cash to pay, nothing in his hand. He pretended, however, that he was expecting a check to arrive at any moment. So he made another excuse, that any moment a check may arrive. Shortly afterwards, a curious episode occurred. Now, very early in the morning, a clergyman is a priest or minister in the church or an official authority of the church, and his wife were awakened by the noise in the study. Study is a place where, books are kept. Creeping downstairs, they heard the chink of money. Chink of money is tinkling sound of the money. Now the sound the sound of falling of the money being taken from the clergyman's desk without making any noise. So he again broke into another house, that is clergyman's house, without making any noise with the poker. Poker is a fire stick. Poker has many meaning, and one the meaning which it's applied here, it's a stick or long rod grasped firmly in his hand, and clergyman flung open the door. Surrender. He pushed the door and asked him to surrender. Then, to his amazement, he realized that the room appeared to be empty. He and his wife looked under the desk and behind the counters. Even up the chimney, there wasn't a sign of anybody. Yet, decks had been opened and housekeeping money was missing. Extraordinary affair, the clergyman kept saying for the rest of the day, but it was not an extraordinary as the behavior of Mrs. Hall's furniture a little later that morning. Now because now he has to survive in that small village and be a part of that inn, he was again up to something. The landlord and his wife were up very early and were surprised to see the scientist's door wide open. Usually it was shut and locked. He was furious if anybody entered his room. The opportunity seemed too good to be missed. They peeped around the door and saw nobody and decided to investigate. They were also curious about the man. So because there was nobody in the room, so they went inside the room to search who is he and what is lifestyle. The bedclothes were cold and showing that scientists must have been up for some time. The stranger still, the clothes and bandages had always wore and were lying about the room. All of the sudden, Mrs. Hall heard a sniff close to her ear because an invisible man was standing beside her. A moment later, the hat on the bedpost leapt, no, it leapt up uh, and dashed itself into the her face. Then the bedroom chair became alive. Springing into the air, it charged straight at her, legs foremost, as she and her husband turned away in the terror. The extraordinary chair pushed them out of the room and then appeared to slam, locked the door after them. Mrs. Hall almost fell down the stairs in hysteric. Hysterics is a kind of nervousness, anxiety, faint fits. She convinced that the room was haunted by the spirits because nobody but everything was moving and nobody was visible, so they thought it is haunted by the spirit. And that stranger had somehow caused these to enter into her furniture. My poor mother used to sit in that chair. She moaned. Now she started, recalling the past, and she started moaning, making sorrowful sound. To think it should rise up against me now. The feeling among the neighbors was that this trouble was caused by witchcraft. Witchcraft is all those magical things or occults happening, and the sorcery. These are things which are magical, whether witchcraft or not. Then when the news of Bulgari at the clergyman's home became known, the strange scientist was strongly suspected of having had a hand in it. Suspicion grew even stronger when he suddenly produced some ready cash, though he had admitted not long before that he had no money. So that was a small town, so everybody is aware of what is going on in the art. There was a theft in one house, and suddenly money came to Griffin, and so Mrs. Hall started suspected him. She started suspecting, and that caused a worry. The village constable, what was his name, Jaffer, was secretly sent for. Instead of waiting for the constable, Mrs. Hall went to the scientist, who had somehow mysteriously appeared from empty bedroom. I want to know what you have been doing to my chair upstairs, she asked. And I want to know how it is you came out of the empty room, how you entered the locked room. The scientist was always quick tempered, short tempered. Now he became furious. You don't understand who and what I am? He shouted. Very well, I will show you. Suddenly he threw off bandage and whiskers and spectacles, even nose, and it took him only a minute to do this. The horrified people in the bar found themselves staring at the headless man. Mr. Jaffer, the constable, now arrived and was quite surprised to find that he had to arrest a man without a head. But Jaffer was not easily prevented from doing his duty. If a magistrate ordered a person's arrest, then that person had to be arrested, with or without his head. There followed a remarkable scene as policemen tried to get hold of a man who was becoming more and more invisible as he threw off one garment after another. Finally, a shirt flew into air, and the constable found himself struggling with someone he could not see at at all. Some people tried to help him but found themselves hit by blows that seemed to come from nowhere because he was an invisible man. In the end, Jafar was knocked unconsciously, but now stuck, beaten at. Knocked here means punched, no, beaten down, as he made a last attempt to hold on to unseen scientist. There was nervous, excited cries to hold him, but this was easier and said than done. Griffin had shaken himself free, and no one knew where to lay hands on him. Interesting story by H.G. Wells. Reread the story, learn the new words, and comprehend the questions given in the between.